Hey, everybody. Today, this is Witness Underground podcast. I am volunteering for the Decult Cult Awareness Conference in New Zealand, and we have with us Lindy Jacomb from the Olive Leaf Network and the co-host of the Cult Chat podcast. How are you doing today, Lindy?
Kia ora, hi. I'm great, thanks.
Yeah. Can you give us a little idea, just briefly, what you will be doing at Decult?
Yes, I am really looking forward to being at Decult. I'm firstly looking forward to learning heaps from everybody else who's going to be there, but I will also be presenting a bit of a panel with my friend Tora Clevier, who's a counsellor and a former recruit of the Children of God, and he is also the president of Cult Information Family Support in Australia, which is a support entity for former members of high demand groups that's been running for several decades in Australia. So he's really experienced in this area, and I look forward to collaborating with him to deliver a workshop on supporting people who leave groups like this.
I'm excited as well. So Anka Richter, the author of Cult Trip, who's organizing, directing the conference, invited me as well to be on a panel and to show my movie, Witness Underground. So I'm also using this as an opportunity to let people know we have a premiere of our film. I'm honored to be at an event as one of the invited guests to speak in the presence of greats in the space, like Janja Lalich, for example. There's going to be a lot of learning. There's psychotherapists, journalists, writers, podcasters, counselors, people that are working in the space professionally. I need their support.
I'm excited to be watching Witness Underground with a whole lot of others as well. I think there are going to be some great conversations after that. So that's really cool.
Ultimately, I think that's the gem of a film like that. It provides a starting point to have discussions. It brings people together that are going to find value in each other's company after. Can you give us an idea of what is the Olive Leaf Network and what you do there?
Yes, so the Olive Leaf Network is a fledgling charitable entity. We only launched last year. Our aims are to give former members of high demand religious groups aid and advocacy, and to raise awareness about what it's like to both be part of a high demand religious group and then the incredible challenges that come when you leave such a group and as you transition out and try and integrate into mainstream society. I'm a former member of the Exclusive Brethren. They're also known as the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. I was born and raised in them here in New Zealand, and I left at age 20. One of the things about the Exclusive Brethren, a little bit like the Jehovah's Witnesses actually, is that they actually practice an extreme version of shunning. They don't call it shunning, but it's extreme social ostracism from your family and your community if you no longer believe exactly what they believe. I experienced that when I was 20, and I lost my parents, my siblings, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, my workplace, my education place. All of that was tied up in the Brethren. When you leave, it's like moving countries. It's a radical psychological, social, emotional upheaval. Very traumatic actually, as well as exciting to be able to find your feet and build a new life. I've been out for 15 years, and as time went on, I realized, well, I might have been able to build a new life and had the great privilege of people supporting me to find my feet and my voice and my wings. I began to see that there are still people presently who are leaving these groups and who are just like I was, a vulnerable person in need of assistance to find my feet. As we looked around the New Zealand landscape, we realised that actually there are no formal entities for supporting people leaving groups like this. There is the Glory of Our Leavers Support Trust, and they do an incredible job supporting people leaving Glory of Vale. Glory of Vale is not actually the only high demand religious group or the only cult-like group in New Zealand. They are definitely one of the most well-known ones. Lots of New Zealanders aren't really aware that actually there's dozens of groups across New Zealand, and some of them are Christian-based, some of them are in the well-being sphere, some of them are other new age spiritualities. They're right across the board, but there are a number of groups that are actually very concerning in New Zealand, and it's really hard to leave them, and people come out with very particular wounds, very particular experiences, and they need tailored support from people who understand. So that's the Olive Leaf Network's heartbeat.
There's an interesting idea, an analogy I really like, which is religious refugee. And the way you described your experience of getting out of the religion then having your entire life, network, community, work, relationships, family, every member of your family taken from you. You might be in the exact same neighborhood, but it's like being in another world on the other side of the planet in a culture with a language you don't speak. And there's something that happens in refugee cultures. There's this moment where that shifts. This is suffering. We're traumatized to, oh, this is an opportunity. We can actually do something here that might be an opportunity we didn't have back home, even if everything went great. That also I experienced, oh, everything's ripped out from underneath me, leaving the religion or getting out of it or getting kicked out, disconnection from all those people. At some point, it's like, oh, everything is possible. Did you have something like that where you had this like a mind shift?
Yeah, that's so true. For me, kind of can flip-flop. Like I do remember in the early months or years, I remember at times feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm like a kid in a candy store. There's just so much I want to do and I want it all now. I want to go to my first rugby game. I want to go to the movies, to the orchestra. I want to skydive. I want to study a million things. And then there'd be other days, to go with the bird analogy of, oh my gosh, I don't know how to use my wings. I can't use them. This is too hard. I'm just going to curl up in a little ball here and not do anything. So for me, it was a real kind of flip-flop thing of sometimes this excitement at the opportunities and at other times being almost paralyzed by the overwhelming opportunity. Like when you're in the supermarket and there's too many mueslis to choose from and you just don't know which one to go for. And
why are there 45 different kinds of mustard?
Yeah, it can feel a bit like that when you come from an environment where everything was laid out for you, all your choices, how you should dress, where you can work, where you can study, who you can marry. It's like your muscles around having personal choice are just so underdeveloped. And so it can at times be really overwhelming as well as exciting.
Yes, you're an ex-cult member. Me too. Maybe that's not the right way to look at it. Maybe we successfully navigated cult mind control. Like, what are your superpowers that you gained from getting that vast education early in life that you now use to make your life better?
Two things spring to mind. There's a beautiful quote from Kahlil Gibran. I may not be pronouncing his name right, but that sorrow has carved into your being, the more joy you can contain, which is very poetic and beautiful and doesn't really do you a lot of benefit when you are actually in pain. I do love it because I think the struggle and the sorrow that I have been through and the depths of grief that you experience when you lose loved ones to shunning, it has given me a profound ability to be grateful and joyful for the little things, secure home, the love of a friend, all those kinds of things. You don't take them for granted because it is sort of like a near-death experience that you go through. And so you do appreciate the beautiful and the good gifts in life more. And the second thing that I would say is it gives you a really good bullshit radar. When you've had that experience of the emperor's new clothes, of being in a crowd of people and they're all worshipping and adulating and falling down and saying how wonderful something is, but you have been able to look at it and go, I see something different and I cannot deny that I don't see what they're seeing and I'm going to stand up and say it. That's a really powerful experience that stays with you for life. In the ideal world, I hope that if I ever find myself in that situation again of being with a crowd of people who are falling down around an emperor who's actually naked, I hope that I would have that integrity again the second time around to say, actually, something's not right here, and I'm going to stand up and say it.
It makes for situations where you're not the most popular person in the room, but you're also the one that's not being manipulated. And you can walk away like, I'm good. I don't need to be a part of that.
Yeah, I remember talking with someone about it, a friend who was struggling over a decision where he knew that he was going to lose friends over it. That's a genuinely painful thing to go through. I've been through that loss of having to lose everything over standing by what I believe in. And it does almost give you that inner strength. I've done this once and survived. I can do it again. That maybe someone else might struggle to do because they don't know. They haven't been through that experience of doing it and surviving. And it feels terrifying to experience a social death, but you can survive it.
I also wanted to talk about your podcast. So you've been doing this, was it a year now with Cult Chat? I'm looking here at the Spotify of the episodes with different people. Children of Rajneesh, Gloria Vale. What are some of the highlights for you of having a podcast and from the people you've met? What have you learned from doing a podcast?
Oh my gosh, that has been such a phenomenal opportunity, and a huge shout out to Dr. Carolyn Ansley because it's really her baby. She's the one who provided the initiative. She was a child at the notorious Centrepoint commune, which was in Auckland in around the 90s. I just so love Kaz's passion for raising awareness in this space, and also as a medical doctor, she's really interested in and advocates for health practitioners and professionals to be aware of these kind of dynamics, especially when they turn up in a professional office and people don't necessarily lead with saying, I'm part of a cult or my child's in a cult. She's really great with advocating for professionals to be aware of these kinds of dynamics. It's been a huge joy as well to be a co-host with Liz Gregory, who is the manager of the Gloria Vale Leavers Support Trust. They're both very experienced women. They're older than me, got lots more life experience, and I just feel so privileged to be journeying alongside them, really. I learned so much from them and from our conversations. It's been a phenomenal opportunity to interview people, to hear other stories. I think the main thing that just blows my mind all the time is the similarities across group. When you've been marinated, as it were, in a very particular group, and that's been what you were born and raised, and that was all you knew, it's still really easy to actually almost come out with a bit of elitism around, oh, that my group was special. You were raised being told you had the truth, your group was special. And it's almost easy to still come out with that mentality of, oh, we were really unique. It's so humbling as well as just fantastic to discover that there are just dozens and dozens and dozens of other groups who also had the exact same tactics, the exact same behaviors, the exact same beliefs. That's been astonishing.
That's something I'm excited about the Decult Cult Awareness Conference that we're both going to be a part of and that we're doing this interview about, is that it does bring many different groups into one room together and a bunch of experts who know all the similarities into one room together with us. I've been in my little bubble and I'm trying to break out of the bubble of the former Jehovah's Witness XJW world. And it is a part of my identity and the identity of our film and the channel, the Witness Underground podcast so far, that I've only worked with former Jehovah's Witnesses. But I've met so many people on other groups that are so similar. And I'm super appreciative of channels that do bridge the gap, like Cults of Consciousness, for example, or a little bit culty with Sarah and Nippy, who are supporters of the Decult Project. We're seeing all these similarities and patterns of control, like the behavior control, information control, thought control, emotion control of the bite model. These people are just turning the dial, but it's the same mechanism ultimately. Oh, you can't wear pants, but oh, now you can wear pants. That's not freedom. That's just another form of control. And they're still talking about what you can wear as a woman.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. Just as another example, something like sex. Because in her book, she researched Gloria Vale. Traditionally, people think of them as being, really hyper modest and conservative with their big blue dresses and hyper conservative Christian group. And yet the other group that Anka researched here in New Zealand was Centrepoint, which was known for the wheel was the opposite way of huge amount of open sexuality and almost no boundaries at all around sex and sexuality. But Anka pointed out that both groups, at the core of them, they're around controlling sex, controlling sexuality, controlling sexual behavior, that even though it manifests in a different way, at the core of it, it all actually comes back to the same methods of control and power and coercion around people, core aspects of their lifestyle and their identity. I agree with you that that's going to be a really powerful aspect of Decult, is being able to bring together people from all these different experiences. Wow, so many similarities in what they have experienced.
Yeah, I don't know if I got this right, but I was talking to a friend about these kinds of groups, and Michel Foucault came up, the French philosopher. One of his points, he wrote, The History of Sexuality, is that the base of controlling humans or organizing society is about controlling sex and somehow influencing people. Does that resonate?
It resonates. It's a powerful force. Money, sex, and power. Anybody who's trying to control others, they're going to want to control that aspect of people's lives.
Have you paid attention to the crowdfund that they're doing with the Decult documentary?
Yes, I have. Yep, I've shared that on Olive Leaf social media and my personal one. Yes.
We might be in it, actually, now that I think of it. I was like, I should support that. I'm like, well, we're going to be speaking there, so we're actually part of the conference. But I'm excited about that. I think it's a way to take something that's very present, an active presence, going to a speaking conference, and then hanging out with people and talking more deeply. They're actually capturing it. If you want to get involved and you're interested in the topic, even if you can't show up, you can help create a thing that you can then benefit from later and share later.
I do think that's really important. People in the US and some other countries have just got so much more awareness in general, and in terms of the general public, that cults exist, threat of recruitment is very real. It feels like New Zealanders are half asleep about the reality of this, that their young adults off at university are genuinely being targeted all the time by harmful groups trying trying to recruit them. I spoke to someone the other day who was just shopping at Kmart. Someone was attempting to recruit them into a group. But it feels like New Zealand, because I guess we haven't had the big Jim Jones thing or the Waco, Texas thing, it's like we're still a little bit asleep as to the reality that there are harmful groups in our landscape. So anything like this documentary, the conference itself, anything that helps raise awareness and get conversation happening is going to be really beneficial to the New Zealand public.
That's great to hear. People might think, oh, Decult in New Zealand, that's a New Zealand problem. But it's such an international group of people that are coming, and it's the exact same thing happening down the street from you. The people that are knocking on your door trying to sell you something are in this thing. The MLM got your cousin trying to sell you something. It's the same structure, and it's in your country if you're listening to this everywhere.
Oh, not to mention the online recruitment. I watched the Twin Flames thing, and I couldn't believe it that most of their recruiting is done online. Even in your own house, you're being recruited.
So one more thing that's interesting about what you're doing with the Olive Leaf Network is you're bringing someone. Can you speak to whose network is bringing to Decult to speak?
Oh, yes. We are so thrilled to be supporting Decult to bring over Dr. Jilly Jenkinson to be one of Decult's keynote speakers. Riding in the slipstream of bringing her over, the Olive Leaf Network is really proud to be hosting Dr. Jilly Jenkinson to run a couple of events specifically for mental health professionals. Dr. Jilly is an international expert in counselling and providing mental health services to former members of cults. And she also has got one of the world's only training programs to help upskill therapists to better enable them to support former cult members. She's going to be doing a 2-day workshop straight after Decult, and that 2-day workshop will be for counsellors, psychologists, people who in a professional capacity are interfacing with cult members. So that will be a 2-day workshop where she introduces her material and provides basic level training as to supporting former cult members. And then in addition to that, a week later, she's going to provide a 5-day intensive for a small group of therapists. It's specifically done in a small group to help get a lot of personal one-on-one contact with those people. And they will come out with like a certificate in post-cult recovery. She'll be offering that to a small group of people. I'm super excited about that because it's a real big problem at the moment in New Zealand is that loads of therapists don't actually have specific knowledge or specific training around the kinds of dynamics that people who are leaving high demand groups are dealing with. We get people contacting us all the time at Olive Leaf Network. People are saying, where do I find a therapist who understands something of what I'm going through? So it's really exciting that Dr. Jilly will be able to provide this 2-day training to a large group of people. That'll be introductory, and then to be also able to provide this 5-day intensive training for a small group of people. So that'll be really cool for the New Zealand therapist scene.
Is this actually for this event? What I brought up on the screen here?
That's correct. Yeah. If you're a therapist interested in cult recovery training, to our website and look at our events, and you can find more information there and register your interest.
That's great. That's excellent. Just for anyone else out there, I'm sure this is going to be excellent. But if you are wondering about that question, a place where I found a good therapist was with the Recovering from Religion. On their website, there's another project called the Secular Therapy Project. I think it's seculartherapy.org. And in there, you can find someone in your region who has cult speciality in some group or in those types of dynamic. It's very much you manually looking for someone and then being able to afford it.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly ideal, but there is a way, and that website has some good resources. And they're vetted. They're like non-religious, and they have an extra layer of vetting. But this is really cool, and I feel like this is just the beginning. All these experts that are coming to Decult have been working on this for decades. Their whole career has been hinging on this problem, even though you and I both left our respective groups. I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I'm an ex-exclusive brethren for you. 15 years ago for both of us, actually. 15 years, yeah.
Cheers.
But I feel like I'm still just sort of beginning to look at what resources exist out there and realizing that it's hard to find. And it took me 15 years to start looking. Actually, I started a couple of years ago, but I'm barely even tapping into what's out there, and almost nobody knows. So it's awesome that you're bringing Jenkinson, Dr. Jilly Jenkinson, and she's providing resources and education for people to level up if they're in the therapy space. It's very important.
It's amazing as well as just overwhelming, because the awareness of the religious trauma space is definitely exploding internationally, and along with it there is a huge increase in resources and study and people popping up to be religious trauma coaches or counsellors, and it can also be quite overwhelming to know where to begin and where to go. It's really helpful to have a few people, and Decult has managed to secure a couple of those people who it's like stamp of approval. These are, as you said, tried and true experts in their field with decades of experience, and they're worth listening to.
Absolutely. That is excellent. I'm so glad that we're connected and that you are able to let us know all the great things you're working on. So thanks for doing all the hard work you're doing and for adding value to Decult and to experience you'll get as an audience if you show up in person, if you show up as a live stream audience member, or if you support the documentary in the crowdfunding for the Decult documentary, or if you just watch it later, but you're adding some value. So thank you, Lindy. And check out her podcast, Cult Chat. Is there any final things you'd like to say?
No, that's fantastic. I look forward to seeing you at Decult.
Yeah, me too. I'll see you at Decult.